All right, we're ready.
Thank you. Um, I would like to firstly thank the AIA team that helped us put this together, and we hope that this will be a informative, educative session to all of the people who have joined. Also, thank you all for taking the time to come by and check this out. My name is Vivek Sai. I'm a person with over 2 decades experience as a project manager in the architecture industry. I've worked with a lot of architecture firms ranging from design build all the way to corporates like URS Corporation and so on. And I'm joined here by Dennis Bays, who is the president of AmeriCore Group. AmeriCore specializes in a lot of credits and incentives and getting these down for small to medium businesses around the country. Obviously, the research and development incentives that we are going to talk about in detail in this talk is a small part of what AmeriCore does. Dennis from AmeriCore got in touch with me, particularly because of my experience in the AEC industry, and he started discussing about AmeriCore's outreach into the AEC industry because while like he AmeriCore has done and gotten these credits for a lot of different kind of businesses in different industries with architecture, engineering, and construction firms, what he describes as it's a dead cinch. The day-to-day activities and the efforts that businesses in the AEC industry take are a very easy way to qualify for the research and development incentives that we will be talking about in detail over here, as well as other incentives and stuff that AmeriCorps does. So before I get started, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me loud and clear and they can see the screen with our slides. If there's any issue with that, just let us know. Um, so getting into the R&D and research and development tax credits, it was formerly called the um, Economic Recovery Act, and it's been around since the 80s. So obviously, it's been around for a long time, long enough for it to be, you know, changed like close to 15 times in the way that it is being offered. Now, it's a federal incentive. The research and development credits is a federal incentive in particular. And what it, the reason the government has provided these credits is because they want to fuel innovation and fuel like growth of companies that put an effort into research and development and bettering their processes and projects as they go forward. And this isn't just restricted to your traditional lab coat, beakers and science experiments sort of businesses. This is available to a whole range of businesses. Especially in 2004, the IRS code came up with the four-part test to help define what are qualifying activities for these incentives. This four-part test is super important. This is something that you guys should really look into and try to think of your business, think of what you do as your day-to-day activities within this framework of this four-part test. Obviously, we will be going more into detail about how each activity and different kinds of activities qualify or not. We will get into that. But a good starting point is the four-part test. So, what is the four-part test? Well, first, importantly, is a permitted and qualified purpose. Are you increasing or improving the functionality, the reliability, reducing costs, improving processes of your business, of your projects, for your clients, and so on? That's question number one. Question two is it technological in nature? Now, for the AEC industry, we qualify in the engineering part of this question. There are obviously physical sciences, biological sciences, and so on that is irrelevant. But for the AEC, what we qualify as engineers, whether it's architects, construction managers, construction companies, and so on. So is it technological in nature? Secondly, what is the uncertainty that you are facing? Your efforts or your processes that your business does. What's the technological uncertainty it's trying to solve? And what you are doing to reduce that uncertainty? So you're developing a process. It might happen for one project. It might be something like an ongoing process that your business has been doing for decades, right? But what is the uncertainty? What is the question that you're trying to answer with your day-to-day activities and so on? And finally, the straightforward thing of process and testing and experimentation. Obviously, like straight up for architecture firms, like if you think about prototypes, markups, or anything that you do to test new materials, try to see how they apply to your design and your project, how they apply to the particular site where you are intervening, and so on. And what are the efforts that your business takes? That's the four-part test. If you can think of your business and your day-to-day activities and put it in this framework of the four-part test, you won half the battle in getting these R&D credits. Okay. And just going back to an overview, if we look at R&D credits, like I said, it's been around since the 80s. It's been around for a long time. What we've seen as a business, and I'm talking about AmeriCore, and I'm working with AmeriCore on this. What we've seen as a business is most of the money that's on the table for small and medium businesses to take is left out, because a lot of small to medium businesses, they feel they're not sophisticated enough, they're not doing the right job, or they're not doing the right processes to qualify for these credits. There's a lot of misconceptions that exist with small and medium business owners. And even if you're a large architecture firm, of course, like a lot of them have these misconceptions that prevent them from going for these credits. So the first thing that we would like to tell you is do not write yourself off straight off the bat with misconceptions. There's a lot of processes that you, even as a small business, even if you're just one architect with a couple of employees, or you're a firm with over 100 branches around the country or something like that, there's a lot of processes that all of you do that qualify for these R&D credits. Okay. So like, first of all, do not underestimate your own business, however small it is, however small your projects are. The dollar value of your projects do not matter. And we'll get into that, what actually matters, and the details of what are the processes that you could be doing to qualify for these. The reason these credits exist is that it wants to help businesses like yours innovate, stimulate your local economy, and of course, grow and expand on a yearly basis, right? The government is not in a charitable industry. The reason they want you to grow is so that the taxes you pay them at the year end grows on a constant basis. That's the reason they put out these incentives, so that your businesses can grow. It's not an altruistic thing, it's pure business, it's pure economics. Okay. And most business owners, especially on the small to medium side, are unaware that even some of these credits exist. The R&D credits is just one of them. There's a lot more. This is a federal incentive. There are state incentives. There are local incentives. So we'll get into some of that, but this presentation is mostly about research and development incentives. What does it mean for architecture firms? Simple things like, coming up with new design solutions, incorporation of BIM, CAD, Rhino, and programs like that in your day-to-day activities. They qualify as activities, and you can go for these credits on a yearly basis, right? And the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, it's made it even easier for AEC industry companies to get these credits. We'll get into some of that recent law changes as well. All right. So we are looking at the whole ecosystem of government incentives to small, medium businesses and to AEC industry. We're looking at over 15 billion of federal research and development tax credits. out of which probably 10 to 12 billion is left on the table because businesses don't even apply for them, right? You're leaving a lot of money that belongs to you on the table. It's important that you go get that. That will help your bottom line, it'll help your business expand and go forward. There are also state and local incentive programs like SALT. There are wide varieties of credits and grants that are provided by the state government in conjunction with the federal government. So a lot of timing issues with this. There are deadlines, first come, first serve basis. This is something that companies and consultants like AmeriCore can help you out with that. So you should be talking to your consultant about these credits that are available to you. And this is not your regular CPA. A CPA or a tax accountant is very geared towards doing taxes for a company on a yearly basis. These credits are not straightforward. They are easy to qualify for, but to prove it, to get the paperwork in place and do the groundwork, is not a straightforward process. There are industry companies like AmeriCore that specialize in this, not just for the federal, but for the state and local taxes. There are also workforce and grants and hiring incentives, which could reimburse you up to 75% of the wages that you're paying. It's up to 75. There are, of course, different targets that can be hit. And also, now, not all companies apply to this, but some companies also have real estate investments. There are incentives where, bonus depreciation and cost segregation, especially a depreciation of the property, can be done in an advantageous way so that you can take money out of it sooner, pay lesser taxes upfront, so that that money can be used to expand your business rather than paying, further taxes to the government. There are also a slew of other programs. Obviously, AmeriCore specializes in all of these. We will concentrate on the research and development credits, the federal ones, which is the first point. Okay. Now, like I said, many architects do not know the applicability of it. They don't know how and why their project activities qualify. What are the daily tasks and stuff that you guys can do, and how you can frame this in that 4-part test that I showed you earlier, as well as look at innovation and advancements technologically. How do you frame your day-to-day activities and your projects within that? And I hope by the end of this session, you will have a better idea of putting that framework down and understanding your own business as well through that. Okay. This how the R&D tax credit works is it is an income tax offset. Okay. So there are two things that it's basically based on. It's either the company's allowable wage, so the wages you're putting out for your employees, which is directly based on the revenue you make in a year, and of course, the number of projects you have and the revenue that comes in from the projects and so on. The other is supply costs. Now, supply costs is not applicable to all AEC industry companies, but you may be a design build firm. You may be a construction firm that not only designs and does the permitting and construction administration, but actually has suppliers, fabricators, contractors, and so on, who are subcontracted by you to build projects. In that case, supply costs also qualify. But for all AEC architecture and engineering firms, the company's allowable wage is the basis for the income tax credit that you get as an R&D credit. Okay? And this allowable wage is based on wage costs of certain activities that qualify, certain processes that qualify, usually happens in the conceptual, schematic, and design development stage. Some of it in CDs, some of it in CA and closeout, but mostly in the earlier part of the stages, because that's where most of the research, most of the design happens, correct? So that's where it applies. And these are some of the potential job titles that qualify for these R&D credits. So, looking at a dichotomy of what activities qualify versus non-qualify, this is very broad on this slide, but alternative design concepts, use of unique materials, sustainability, mixed use development, affordable housing, urban planning, testing of materials, testing of prototypes or mock-ups, and of course, technical factors, especially if you're doing hospitals and facilities like that, or you're doing auditoriums, movie theaters, specialized work like that, that qualifies. Any of the wage hours that you spend on research and development, developing your processes, actually doing the project, some part of it as well, qualifies for those credits. What don't qualify is, say, your firm is hired by someone else to do research into a particular thing, and that's a contract, and you are paid for it completely, which guarantees payments from this third party company, then that wouldn't qualify. That third party company could possibly put in themselves for the R&D credit, but you as just a sub-consultant of that would not be able to qualify. And also any prototypes that do not show technological advancement and so on, they tend to be a little harder to prove than other prototypes and so on. Again, we should go back to that 4-part test, and we will review that as we go forward. But this is just a broad idea of qualifying versus non-qualifying activities. Okay. So when and how can you claim tax credits? These tax credits can be claimed every year, and the statute of limitations takes it back to the last 3 years that you filed taxes. Okay. This timing is super important. So you can go, if you file taxes for 2025, then you can go back all the way to 2024 and 2023. Okay. If you've done it for 2026, it goes back to 2024. All right. Now, some businesses are probably expanding and doing well. So your business has been growing the last 3 years. Then the most important year that you need to file for is probably the latest year, because that'll give you the maximum wage base and the maximum revenue to get the maximum credit out. But if you're a business that has been struggling in the last 3 years, say your best year was 2024, and since then the number of projects and the people you're paying and the people you have hired has reduced. You're not going out of business or something, you're just struggling to keep up with the times or whatever. Then your most important year to get the R&D tax credit would be 2024. The sooner you get it, the better, because that's the year when you had the maximum wage base to base your credits out of. Okay. And if your company meets the standards that we're going to go into detail right now, then you qualify for these credits. Secondly, just to review again the 4-part test, remember, try to frame everything that you do within these 4 parts. It is permitted, qualified purpose, technological in nature, technological uncertainty, and process of experimentation. Okay, these are 4 really important things. Doesn't matter if you're from the AEC industry or from any other industry. They all have to pass this test to qualify. Now, what are the detailed activities that firms can do to qualify for this? We will go into this in a little more in these slides. Now, I apologize, some of them might seem redundant and there are a lot of overlaps, but we've tried to put them in some broad, categories that most architecture businesses take care of and engineering businesses do. So obviously, sustainability, environmentally friendly and environmentally efficient buildings, use of computers and use of AI perhaps and machines to figure out how these buildings are performing, optimizing energy use, energy modeling, and of course, mixed use development, all of these qualify. Certifications like LEED and so on. So any hours you spent on this stuff qualifies for the credits and should be logged or something to ensure that you get the maximum out of it. Now, Dennis will go in later as we go on. Dennis will go more into detail how the credits are calculated a little bit quickly. You can go 2 ways. You can either take a straight up percentage of the hours you spent in a year and allot them to each of these activities, or you can actually keep track of the time you're spending on a day-to-day basis on each of these things. And at the end of the year, use those numbers to get your credits. Okay. There's two ways to do this. And one is, of course, a little more complicated than the other. Second is if your firms do parametric or computational design, then you automatically qualify as well for this, especially using Grasshopper and Rhino, complex geometries, integration of computers and AI into design, and also working with environmental and structural engineers to figure out how your designs work with their issues and so on, and using programs to do so, that also qualifies. An example is I used to work for a design build artist, public artist. We used to have a lot of LEDs and art that was displayed that way. We use Grasshopper for permutation and parametric design a lot. And that, like most of our hours, I would say 50% of the hours we spent on a yearly basis would be going for these kind of designs. If you're a firm like that, doesn't matter how small you are, you qualify. So we can also always help you with that. Thirdly, if you're experimenting with new materials, custom engineering solutions, or innovative construction methods, if your designs are really pushing the edge of developing partnerships with construction firms, coming up with new prefab or other methods to come up with constructing a building, and of course, efficiency, resilience, and reducing costs is always there, and experimentation. Any activities that you can identify in this would also qualify. Okay. If you do smart buildings and integration, you use control systems, lighting, audio, any other like the use of water, the use of resources within the building, and use automation, especially to drive these systems, these environmental systems, HVAC, or any of the other systems. And you also do a survey after you finish your building, after it's constructed. If you do post-occupancy evaluations to see how performance of these buildings is keeping up with the times, then the efforts in that research, even after occupancy, the hours you use for that also qualify for R&D credits. Okay. If you're a firm that is purely design, but you're enhancing your presentations through virtual reality, augmented reality, or interactive design tools, use 3D modeling or advanced software, obviously CAD, 3D Studio Max, Rhino, SketchUp is the usual industry standards. If you use any of those and dedicate time to A, do that for your projects, and B, as a business, improve these systems within your business so that every new project you become better at it and you can show those hours, then they qualify as well. And obviously, structural analysis and thermal performance, lighting studies, anything like that that your office would do would help you qualify for these credits. Okay. And even if you're not, super detail oriented into design stuff, if you are an urban planning firm, and I'm including planning as well, not just urban design. Urban designers usually do all the stuff that we talked about in the previous slides. An urban planning firm might just be looking at entitlement research, zoning research, trying to figure out how affordable housing, mixed-use development, transit-oriented developments can come up in communities. They also do community charrettes. They do community meetings. So all the efforts for this, even from a planning firm side, would qualify, because this qualifies as research and development, not only for the projects you're doing, but for your firm, for your business as well, to become better and innovate as you go forward. Okay. And finally, anything to do with resilience and disaster resistant design. Earthquakes come to mind. Obviously, we are in an earthquake zone, and seeing the fires last year, we are in a high fire danger zone as well. Any technological advancements or design advancements you can make to mitigate these risks that we face on a yearly basis, that would also qualify. So all of these slides where we try to go a little more into detail of day-to-day activities, if you're even checking off 2 or 3 of these, then your business is primed to take advantage of the credits that are available. Okay. With that, I would like to hand over the presentation to Dennis, and he'll go over some of the recent policy changes and so on, and some more details for you.
Thank you, Vivek. Um, yeah, guys, the way to look at this is what's in it for the government. And so what happened was back in 1981 when Japan their auto industry surpassed the U.S. auto industry, it really put a shake into the economy and fears of the future, and it caused the government to say we've got to stimulate our industry. We don't want to get fat and lazy. Let's be innovative. And so they created this R&D program, and that was great for some of the large companies who obviously, from what Vivek has gone through, it's a detail-oriented program. And the smaller companies said, "Hey, we do a lot of this R&D work as well, but maybe we don't have as many people helping us, document and put it together." And so what they've done over the years is they've changed the law over a dozen times. And so many CPAs you think would know all there is to know about tax, but just like an architect doesn't know everything about everything. That's why you've got to do some research and look at things. This program has become something to stimulate and help the economy. The government wants high-paying, good quality jobs, and they want businesses that do those kind of work to stay here in the U.S. And that's why they've built these programs. The PATH Act really just said, hey, small companies qualify even if they don't have as much documentation as the larger companies. Think of it as like a large company as a bus driver with a bunch of people looking out the windows, picking up as many opportunities as possible. And a small business is mom and dad in the front seat and screaming kids in the back seat. You're trying to not crash. You're not really able to look for all the advantages, but you're both going somewhere. And so that's why these programs were developed. Uh, Vivek, can I move slides?
No, that's okay. I can take care of that. I moved it to the
Okay.
next slide. Just let me
Yeah.
know. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
So there's always a little war between politicians and the IRS. The politicians want to stimulate the economy. They're not necessarily promoting these programs because business owners are evil in some cases politically, and so helping them is sometimes a political hot potato. But they know they need business owners to employ high quality, high paid employees. And so the these programs they get promoted, but they don't get well defined. The IRS, their job is to collect as much as possible. So there's always a little battle between both. And so the PATH Act said, hey, we have to help the small companies, not just the large ones. And the IRS said, great, but they don't do all their dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and we're gonna use the law to our advantage and still squeeze them for as many tax dollars as possible. What happened? Finally went to court, and the small business won. Architects and engineering firms that the government was or the IRS was trying to squeeze actually proved that they do the work that qualifies. And so the 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 issue really has been settled. The the problem is because the law is settled doesn't mean that you can just make a phone call and ask for a check. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of details that are necessary. Um, and that's probably the problem that most people don't know is they assume the CPA is a lawyer when the CPA is not a lawyer. Their job is to take in information and file. They don't do analysis. They don't do the detailed requirements, just like a general contractor doesn't do what you guys do. Um, but they're building the house or the ones you see swinging the hammer and the nails, you think that they would know something. They know what they know, but they don't know everything. And so the the problem that's I'd say happened to most businesses is they call the person they think has the answer, and that person is not the right person. They don't want to admit that they don't have the answer, so they say, "Why don't we be conservative?" And it's probably not for you. And they uh, they leave money on the table. And that's just something that we've been for almost 20 years now, helping businesses exit their companies. And the value of your company depends on the profitability of it. So for every $10,000 that we put to the bottom line, how much top line revenue would you have had to have made to bring 10,000 to the bottom line? So for these R&D credits, if there's 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000, how much top line revenue would you have had to have made to bring that money to your bottom line? So these common misconceptions, these are things that stop people from I think reaching out and asking for the money that they're entitled to. Um, you know, one, it's just, I've been paid and I paid my taxes, everything's there. I guess there's nothing really for me to do. Or they think it's so complicated that you have to really come up with a patent. You have to come up with a new idea. You have to have something that the world has now changed because of your work. That's not how the law is read. It's not, that's been proven in court. That's not the requirement. You don't need a patent. Um, Sometimes they think that they did something, but it didn't work. So therefore, that's just a lost or a lost dollars. It's not something applicable, or that they don't actually they're not the ones that are doing the actual research on a new product or things. Um, I think Vivek said it earlier. It's almost like they're not with the beakers and the burners trying to come up with some new chemical. You don't have to be that person. You just have to be somebody that's working to improve the processes, the productivity, the advancements. It's a lot easier than you think as far as the law. It's just difficult with how you can document it. I'd say the biggest problem that I run into are the CPAs. They're not built to go up against the IRS. They do not want to rattle anybody's cage. They'd rather be conservative than aggressive. Um, and so they'll often say, it'll probably cause an audit. Why don't we just avoid that? It won't cause an audit. If you forgot to apply for your mortgage credit, if you own a house and you've got a mortgage and you forgot to apply your mortgage credit, and you go back 3 years and say, I forgot to apply my mortgage credit. Here's the paperwork. I have a mortgage. I have this. The government's going to say, yeah, you're right. And they'll send you a check. If you put solar panels on your building and you forgot to get the solar credit and you apply for it, and it does not increase a chance of an audit. If you lie or you don't have your paperwork or you don't send in the right information, that'll cause confusion, which will cause a question. And that's why it's really important to know who you're working with and what they're providing you, or if you do it yourself, that you do it correctly. And again, what we talked about, Vivek said very well. They think that my projects don't work, or that I don't have enough details. Any of you that have probably a good way to think of this, if you're a truck driver, you log your miles, your hours, your miles every day. You've got very detailed mileage logs. But any of you that have an automotive deduction or a mileage deduction on your tax return, it would be beautiful if you do have perfect logs. But if your car moved 18,000 miles and you said 30% of it was for business, the government will allow that. So just because you don't have as much detail as the CPA thinks you need, They don't understand that the laws have changed. There's alternative simplified methods, there's contemporaneous methods, there's different ways to document, and those credits then become dollars. And if you want to leave the dollars on the table, like most people, that's what happens. But if you choose to, spend a minute and do a little bit of uh, data filing, we can get you those dollars. Um, and like we said before, if you if you don't create a patent, it doesn't matter. If it's not the changing of society that's important, it's are you doing the activities? Um, and again, it's it's a little overwhelming, right? Think about uh, what you guys do compared to, other people. You've got to be detailed. You've got to do it right because if it's not done right, the bridge will fall down, the roof won't work, all the different problems. Um, and so sometimes people think they don't have the ability to answer those questions or to provide the information. Um, we've got so many years doing this. Our job is to, help you through it if you need help. Um, but the bottom line is, uh, you know, big companies have been taking advantage of this program. They absorb probably 60% of the R&D credits because they've got consultants and tax attorneys and specialists that know the law, provide the documentation, and apply that law and get their money. Um, Small businesses typically are too busy driving their business down the road at 80 miles an hour to look out the window and identify, all the street signs and opportunities that they're passing. Um, that's our goal, our mission. I'm originally from Silicon Valley, where I helped a lot of entrepreneurs raise capital and sell their companies and then manage those portfolios afterwards. Too many people just leave so much money on the table, or they get an average outcome of what could have been an amazing outcome. Our whole idea is let's bring the Wall Street and technical ideas down to Main Street business. So, if you're a 200 million, $500 million architectural firm, you may already have people like us. But if you're a $1 to $25 million firm, um, sometimes you just don't get the help that you could or may need, and that's our job.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm going to quickly go over the rest of the slides as well. So, as Dennis mentioned, this and I went through the activities. As you see, most of the activities that we've talked about for architects and what they do, they mostly qualify for these credits. What is complicated is not the qualifying part. It's how to prove and get the documentation in place to, make sure that you are applying for these credits right and providing your CPA with the information they need to go and ask for these credits, right? So what is it that you should be expecting from your R&D technical consultant? Obviously, we come from AmeriCore. We do this, like Dennis said, they have over 2 decades experience of doing this for a variety of industries. And the best way we can give you an expectation of what to expect from a consultant is tell you what AmeriCore does, what some of our competitors do, give you an idea of the process and what to expect with that, right? So the first basic standard operating procedure of what we do and what these consultants do, the R&D credits people, is that there is an initial consultation and feasibility study. So, in the case of AmeriCore, people like me or people who know the AEC industry would come meet with you as business owners, try to understand your company, understand your operations, check off the activities that we need to highlight to get these credits. And of course, do an initial document review, apart from the questions that we have and an understanding of your business, we'll also need financial data. We would need the tax filings for the years that you want to ask the credit for. And in addition to that, we will work with your CPA to figure out any other financial questions that we have. Okay. Now, all of this that you see on this slide, the initial consultation, the feasibility analysis, the document review, all the financial analysis, the deliverable at the end will be a rough estimate of the credits you can get for each of the years. Research and development credits, and if there are any other credits that AmeriCore can help with, they'll probably try to give you an idea of that as well. It'll be a rough estimate. All of this is done completely complimentary, free of cost. We do not charge anything for you. All of this is done so we can also understand how much money you've left on the table, and whether is it worthwhile to go for it just now, or should we wait a year and then sort of get you into the system so that there's enough meat on the bone for you to take the credits out and so on. After that, if you wish to move forward with your consultants, whether it's AmeriCore or anybody else that you choose, there would have to be a consulting agreement, and that will have to be signed between you and the company who you're hiring. And after that, in that consulting agreement, the final deliverables will be decided upon, a payment will be decided upon. The payment is usually a fraction of the credits that your company will receive at the end of the process. And the deliverables are usually a fully defensible IRS and Treasury standard report, financial, looking at all of your activities, putting in the arguments that you need to go for each of the credits. And this is something that we would provide to your CPA so that they can go ahead and then file for the credits for you. So it's a fully audit ready, defensible document that will be the final deliverable. And that will be available when the payment that is agreed upon in the consultant agreement is paid. And the report will be handed over to you. Your CPA turns it in, and then you get the credit from the government. Okay. We also do not step over anybody's toes. We don't think that we should be going around your CPA. We work with your CPA. To do the initial analysis that we need to understand your business, to understand your finances, to see where money is to get for you, and also to provide the documentation and the paperwork that is so important, especially with the 4-part test, with the PATH Act, with everything that went through with the recent law changes. The documentation and justifying of your credits is super important. That's not straightforward. We will provide your CPAs and your financial planners the means to go and get those credits. And after that, for ongoing support, like say, you did not go due to the size of the fee or whatever, for any financial reason, you did not go for all the 3 years. You went for the earliest year. Okay, let's do 2024 right now, get the full credit from that. We'll pay you and then pay for the other two, which is 2025 or 2026 or so on. We will be there with you year after year and work with you even in the future so that you can look ahead and say, okay, I've done 2 years of work over here. I would like to take the credits for these 2 years in the third year coming forward. AmeriCore will help you through those years, help you put in systems in place or give you advice so that you can track everything better. Like I said, you can always go by the percentage method, which Dennis said is the easier method. But the more information you have and the more diligent tracking you keep of your activities, higher the likelihood of the amount of credits that you're going to get back is higher. Okay. So we will advise you on that, give you some tips on how to keep track of certain things, especially for your business. If we do the credits once for you, we understand how your business works. We'll say, okay, do this, keep track of these things so that in the future, It's a much more straightforward process to get these credits for. Okay. And overall, like to just, compare us with our competitors, this should give you a rough range of what you should expect from your consultants, whoever you choose to hire. You should expect what AmeriCore gives you. Okay, that's the industry standard. That's the basic standard operating procedure. Some of our competitors don't even come close, but this is a comparison of this. The scope of the review is fully technical from the side of AmeriCore. We always do the four-part test and we go into the details of it. There's technical narratives. We try to capture 100% of all your credits. Typically, our competitors, they don't go for the whole thing. They're afraid of audits, poking the bear, as they say. We are not. We will go in for the full thing that you are owed. Secondly, if you need suppliers, contractors to be part of it, that is an option as well with us. Design build firms and construction firms have a little more complicated services than just an architecture or engineering firm. CPA confidence in the reports that AmeriCore has submitted has been high. Dennis and AmeriCore can provide substantiation for that as well. Um, and the risk posture that AmeriCore starts with is conservative and defensible, not conservative by omission. You can be conservative, be completely risk averse, and say, okay, even if I don't even get into this, I don't have to worry about the risks of it. Well, you're leaving $12 billion of R&D credits annually. Small to medium businesses have left it on the table. You'll be conservative in what you're expecting and make sure you're defending everything that you're arguing to the IRS and to the government to and get the credits that you. This is an idea of what you should expect out of the consultants that you choose to help you with these R&D tax credits. And our advice to you is do not just go to regular CPAs or tax attorneys. Look for industry leaders in this, in government and state credits, in other kind of credits like AmeriCore, and try to work with them because they work with whoever your financial and CPA planners are. Okay. That's super important. Why is timing critical? I mentioned this earlier. If you're a firm that is struggling recently, your best year was 2023, then the time is running out for you to go for those credits from 2023. That's the last year you can go, considering that the last year you filed is 2025. If you already filed 2026 taxes, then the furthest you can go back is 2024. Okay. So remember that time runs out on these things, especially with state programs and stuff. It's always a first come, first serve basis. And the getting in there quick makes all the difference in getting the maximum credit speed. Policy changes happen all the time. The IRS is not going to give up trying to, get their money from you guys in whatever way possible. So the way the Harper versus Commissioner thing went down, probably 2, 3 years down the line, they'll come up with a new argument that would make R&D tax credits hard again. You know, so try to get as much as you can now before any of those things, policy changes impact you. Okay, and every day you wait on this is a missed opportunity. So look, go work with your tax consultants, work with the companies like AmeriCore in the industry, and try to figure out what is owed to you. Because definitely there's money owed to you as a small to medium business. With that, Dennis, I think you can take over the final slides now, and we'll open it up for Q&A. I hope there's enough time. I think just 5 more minutes, and we can open up for Q&A. Possible.
Yeah, you know, the way I've always looked at this little part of our business is we're not here for transactions. We're here for relationships. We like to do multiple projects for our clients. We've helped companies grow from startups all the way to exits. We've done family office support, managed multi-million dollar portfolios. Our goal is to bring what the very larger companies and decamillionaires are doing to individuals that have good businesses. They just don't have all the high level team members on their consulting dais. So our model is we've been there, we've learned it. It's not an effort for us to bring in the information. We already have it. Um, but it's difficult to find the people that either understand that these options are available to them or have the time, will make a few minutes of time to have a conversation and look for what they have that's available. Um, but we're here to help. We love the AIA's ability to help their members. We're here to help. We're looking to be a partner for anybody that needs one. Um, Sometimes I say for selfish reasons. You'd be surprised how many people we help, and then we then end up helping a relative or a friend or somebody else as well because of that introduction that is made. Um, so it's just interesting for many businesses that are running. Um, think about where you were and where you are today. A lot of knowledge, and business world is all about relationships and information. We've got information that maybe is a little specialized, and you've got relationships that maybe you could introduce the AIA to or somebody else. So we're here to be a team. We're looking for people that like that approach. Um,
Great. Um, so with that, I think, guys, just to give you an idea, like um, Dennis has worked with AmeriCore for the last 2 decades, but has a much longer experience running businesses and different kinds of businesses. Okay. I know a lot of the people who are joining today are probably the business owners of your firms, of your practices, you know, and obviously you'll have a lot of questions about what we have discussed in this. But take advantage of this opportunity to talk to Dennis as a business owner himself from a different world from AEC. Dennis and I have talked about the AEC industry quite a bit. It's like I've told him that it's a tough industry. If there's something wrong in the market, if there are headwinds, it's usually the first to be hit and the last to recover. And we've been through a few cycles of this. We've been through the 2008 crisis, the worst financial crisis in 100 years, the worst pandemic in 100 years, the dot-com bubble before that. And what I think, Dennis, is looking like a pretty frothy market right now with the AI investments and so on. So a bubble sort of atmosphere, which is ominous, I think. So, we've been through these different cycles, and the AEC industry always seems to be the first to be hit, the last to recover. It's the nature of the business because of the capital investments that go into it. They're usually the ones that get dried up first, and they're last to come back into play when the money is flowing again. So yeah, use this advantage. This time that we have for the Q&A right now. Um, Dennis and I are available. I'll obviously go over how the R&D credits sort of bridge over to the AEC and architecture firms and so on. But Dennis is an absolute wealth of information if you need for any kind of questions you have about running a business and going through these difficult waters and so on. So with that, AIA team, Erica, I hope that was super informative, and we would like to open up for Q&A right now.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Vivek and Dennis. Everyone, now is your opportunity, well, we still have them, excuse me, my voice is hoarse, to ask them a question.
Hey, Dennis and Vivek. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Jake Schreiber. I'm the CFO for Cannon Building. We're a general contractor that we do some design build work as well. I have been talking to various tax consultants recently, and I think the thing I always get stuck on is, okay, we have qualifying activities, and once they review my contracts, we don't qualify, and they always reference this Meyer, Borgman, and Johnson case law that just happened in 2024, where fixed price contracts aren't contingent on the research, but in construction, I feel like we're always on lump sum, T&M, GMP contracts. I mean, is there a lawyer or someone I should be seeing first to make sure our contracts are compliant before consulting with you guys on the tax level?
Well, the good news is we can take a look at what you're doing and give you our view of it. If there's no cost, we don't charge unless we deliver dollars to your pocket. So if we need to look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, and if you do qualify, we'll let you know. If you don't qualify, what you might be able to do to qualify. So it might be something contract wise. Um, but again, sometimes it's an interpretation of the law or the latest law. So just because somebody says no, you don't qualify, I wouldn't take it for. I had a client, two CPAs told him he didn't qualify for a program, not R&D. It was a different program, and had him talk to another tax attorney with a CFO, and we just walked through the law. Just we read the law together, and between the four of us, they said, "Well, then don't we qualify?" I'm like, "You do." But why did my CPA? Because they're not every advisor knows everything, and what they look at is not always your situation. They may be broad brushing it. So I don't know if that helps, but I would say don't take no for an answer.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Right, Vivek and Dennis, we also have a question in the chat that comes from John K. Chan, who thanks both of you for the presentation today, and he wants to know, can you give some indication of how much money smaller and larger firms are leaving on the table by not going after these credits? And how does AmeriCore's compensation strategy work?
Yeah. So um, we take a percentage of the findings. It depends on the project and the scope. I'd say the smallest recovery we had was the guy that did the acoustic tiles to our office, got him $17,000. I don't think that's life-changing money. It's not even a good week, but that's straight to the bottom line, and it's not something that you have to spend money to get. Um, we've had people that have gotten over $500,000. So it just depends on the size of your business. So it's hard to tell. Um, I tell people if you haven't paid over the last 3 years a total of at least 50,000 in taxes, we may not be able to do much for you. Won't cost you for us to verify and tell you. Um, but if you've had write-offs, you've paid no taxes, no taxes, no taxes, then there's not going to be any credits available for you or no money. There may be credits. Something that we forgot to tell you guys, these credits last for 20 years. So somebody could potentially have $100,000 worth of credits, but not have taxes apply them to yet, but will in the next few years. Or if you were to sell your company, those credits have value. So again, it's hard to be too general with this because everybody's got a specific situation. Um, but it's easier to make a decision once you have the information. So once we look at what you have, we tell you the numbers, and then we can decide if it makes sense. I would say worst case is about a 30-minute conversation and maybe 45 minutes of sending us some information. So if your investment a little over an hour could be worth zero, but it could be worth 10 to 100,000.
And just to clarify your question about the compensation strategy for AmeriCore, like I'd mentioned, and Dennis also just mentioned, the initial consultation, understanding your business, getting your financial information and analyzing that, and coming up with a rough number of what your credit will be. All of that is done free of cost, uh, completely complimentary. At that point, once AmeriCore knows the number and you as a business know the number, that's when AmeriCore will bring in the consultant agreement. You guys will negotiate the fee is usually a fraction of, a percentage of the credits that you can totally get. Remember, you can get all your 3 years at one time, or you could do 1 year, and so on. I think, Dennis, you mentioned how you worked with companies who were a little skittish about paying the fee up, all of it up front and trying to get the credit. They're like, okay, let's file for 1 year, give us the fee for that. The remaining, which is the lion's share of the percentage, goes to the company. Use some of that to pay for the credits for the remaining 2 years, right? So
Correct.
that AmeriCore can work with you as a business, see what is comfortable for you, and come up with things for that. And that negotiations, the deliverables, the payment, that happens after the whole complementary process of understanding roughly how much is owed to you. Once you sign the agreement, AmeriCore and its partners will do a full deep dive into all of your financials again, work with your CPA to get any other additional information, work with you as a business owner, your operations team to figure out what hours you spend on what activities, and give you a fully detailed report as the final deliverable. And that number at the end would be much more definite than the initial rough number that we get. In the end, the fee will be a percentage of the final uh, number, which they will know at that end deliverable. And the deliverable will be submitted to you once you make the payment to AmeriCore. Then you take the deliverable or the report, give it to your CPA. Your CPA files it with the IRS, and you await. You then have the credit then sent to you. So that's roughly a process. I hope I didn't miss anything, Dennis, or belabor the point, but yeah.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to add value, and I hope you still get enough time to have your lunch.
Yeah. And I just want to check, are there any other questions, Erica, or?
I don't see any in the chat. Does anyone else want to verbally ask a question to Vivek and Dennis while we still have them? It's valuable information here.
Well, great, guys. We have our contact information up on the screen right now. I'll also provide the PDF to you guys at AIA. Shortly send it over as well. That'll be available on the main event page. But yes, like help us help you guys, help your businesses. Give us a chance, and we will just the initial conversation, like we said, there's nothing to lose for you. You just need some of your time and your patience to work with us, and then figure out what you guys are owed. Because we are pretty sure that most of you have left. If you've never done this before, then you definitely left a lot of money on the table. But or you've done it through other channels or other consultants. Try and give us a chance as well, and we will be able to help you out. Maybe learn from each other as well.
All right. Well, huge thank you to Vivek and Dennis. We really appreciate your time today. And thank you everyone for joining us. As Vivek mentioned, I will be sending out a post-event email that will have the PDF of today's presentation as well as their contact information so that you can get in touch. And we'll also put that on the website. And in addition to that, we also recorded today's session, so we'll put this webinar on our YouTube channel. And with that, we're going to stop the recording now. Thank you so much, Vivek and Dennis.
Thank you.